All right, thank you. Let's call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, October 13th in the year 2020. Ms. Teresa, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we are.
All right, thank you. Would you please call roll?
Certainly. Ms. Lippert? Ms. Lippert, are you with us?
She is.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Foss?
Here.
Mr. McAllister?
Here.
Ms. Remke?
Here.
Mr. Carstens?
Here.
Mr. Gentleman?
Here.
And Mr. Molesky is excused.
All right, thank you very much. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Judd. We have a motion from Mr. Carstens. Is there a second?
A second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Foss, who seemed to get it right in under the wire. So board members, if you have changes to the agenda, state them when called upon by Ms. Teresa. Otherwise, vote yes or no to approve the agenda. Excuse me, agenda. Ms. Teresa, would you call roll, please?
Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
Yes.
There it is.
Mr. Carstens?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes. So the agenda is approved unanimously, and I assume everyone's had a chance to review the meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2020. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of meeting of September 22nd, 2020.
Thank you, Kathy. We have a motion by Ms. Foss. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a second from Ms. Remke. Thank you, Debbie. If you have any changes to the minutes, please state them when your name is called. Otherwise, please vote yes or no. Roll call, please, Ms. Teresa.
Yes, sir. Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Carstens?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes. So the meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2020 are approved unanimously. Are there any citizen comments?
Public comments concerning agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the town's open town hall portal. There were none submitted. Citizens were also provided the option to sign up for public comment participation during the meeting by phone, and nobody did.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we'll move on to unfinished business. The alteration addition for 709 Schooner Court, DRB 001793-2020. Chris?
You will see on your screen the site outlined in red. I will note that this is this the fourth time in a row that this site, not this project, but this site has been on the DRB agenda. It has to be a record. The Lighthouse Road kind of snakes across the screen here. Again, the site is outlined in red. The unit in question is right there, if you see where my cursor is, and directly planned south of that, or photo south of it, is Harbor Town, and you can see the iconic harbor. Does everybody know where we are? If you don't, please let me know. Seeing none, we'll move on. This project will add a third floor to the existing two-story townhouse at 709 Schooner Court. Several other units within the Schooner Court development have successfully added a third story to their existing townhouses, and this renovation follows those examples. The architecture is designed to match and blend in with the adjacent community buildings. The materials and windows will match the existing systems in type, size, style, and color. The stucco will be painted to match the new regime color scheme. And I'm just reminding you that you all approved that 2 meetings ago in September. This project was withdrawn prior to a vote at the September 22nd meeting. Staff recommends approval as submitted. So we're just going to look at some pictures of the site. This is this is the unit in question. The corner of it off to the right is Lighthouse Road of this slide. You can see that unit right there at the end. Again, we're looking at the unit from Lighthouse Road. This is an example of an end unit that had the third story added. A picture of the unit, again, that is here from the parking area. So in this aerial, the unit in question is right here. Again, you can see Lighthouse Road on the right-hand side. And specifically, this picture was taken to show the shutters or lack of shutters on an end unit. Again, this is the location of the unit in question, Lighthouse Road off to the left. This would be the parking side, and the water is at the top of your screen. A floor plan for the third story. Wall sections. The existing two-story structure elevations. And then the proposed elevations with the third story added. An existing view from Lighthouse Road, again without the vegetation. This would be the the parking lot side of the unit in question with the new third story. The water side of that unit. Sort of a little bit of an aerial, again, of the parking lot side. That back corner with the windows that now match in width. Another view of the front, of the proposed elevation of the front or parking lot side. And that concludes staff's presentation.
All right, thank you, Chris. Couple questions before you go, Chris. I think I know the answer to this, but could you state it? Has this been approved by Sea Pines?
Yes, sir. We have approval from Sea Pines ARB.
Okay, thank you. And a very small technicality, but was this project tabled at the last meeting versus withdrawn?
You're correct. Hold on. What is it? I'm sorry. Do you know that?
Pretty sure it was this one.
I think it was.
Was it this one? I think it was tabled. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Just wanted to be correct since we're on Facebook, so. Because it's all true. Okay.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, we're double checking, and it
Okay.
was tabled at the last meeting. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So we'll move on to the applicant, and after introductions, if Teresa will run a 10-minute timer, And Steve, I think I saw your name pop up. Or are you out there? And if there's anyone else, please identify yourself.
Steve, can you unmute your computer?
Yeah, let's try that.
That works. Thank you.
Okay. So this is Steve Stowers with Architecture 101.
Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us again. You have 10 minutes to embellish or add anything to Chris's narrative.
Okay. So I'm getting feedback here. Let's turn this off. Okay, perfect. Okay. So we've took your comments from the last meeting, and what we've done is we've added windows to the third floor on the Lighthouse Road side. And then there was a considerable discussion at the last meeting about the shutters and the fact that the two windows on the water side didn't match each other. So what we've done is we're actually going to replace the window on the second floor to match if you can go back to that previous image, Chris, there you go, perfect. We're actually going to replace the second floor window so that both the third floor and the second floor windows match. And then we're going to forego shutters on that side, which is in keeping with probably 15 other units that face the water on that side of the building. The Lighthouse Road side and the parking lot side will still have the shutters.
All right, thanks. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's all I've got.
Okay,
I think
hang tight.
those are the comments from last meeting.
Okay, yeah, hang tight in case anyone has any comments. But to me, it appears you've addressed all the discussion from last time. But we'll go through the order. Mr. McAllister, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, just like the chairman just said, I think you've addressed all the comments and the discussions that we had last meeting, so I think it looks great. No comment.
Thank you. Mr. Karstens.
No comments other than I appreciate the consistency amongst all the units with this renovation.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Lippert?
I agree. I think you listened to all our comments and implemented them. One tiny little question that I had was, I believe on that front perspective view, I'm seeing a firewall now to the adjacent unit that we didn't have in the previous version. Is that correct?
In this image right here,
Yeah.
that's the existing fire separation, that little corner that sticks out.
Gotcha. Okay. I just didn't remember that. I think it looks good.
All right, thanks, Annette. Ms. Remke?
I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I missed all the discussion, but it looks fine to me. I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Ms. Foss?
Agree with everyone else. Thank you for responding to our concerns, and it looks great to me.
Yeah, ditto here. I think it looks great, Steve. So I have nothing to add. Chris, any follow-up comments from staff?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, then. Pardon me just one second. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve Schooner Court 709 DRB 001793-2020 as submitted.
All right, thank you. We have a motion from Ms. Foss for approval as submitted. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second from Mr. McAllister. Again, as we go through, as Ms. Teresa calls roll, vote yes or no, please. Ms. Teresa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes. So motion passes unanimously. I got you out of here in record time, Steve. I don't know what you're going to do with the rest of your day. So,
Mr. Gentleman.
Although I somehow didn't get to vote.
Yes, Mr. Gentleman, I'm so sorry. Miss Lippert, I missed Miss
Oh,
Lippert.
yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Sure did. Okay, well, this may change things, Steve, so you better hang tight. Miss Lippert, would you
Yes.
like to cast your vote? Okay, good. Now we're
Yes.
unanimous. Yeah, your name got dropped off the list, so it's a typo. All right, so that doesn't change anything. So you're good to go. The book's closed on this one.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, so now we will move on to new business. Alteration addition, Nunzio patio roof, DRB 001947-2020. Chris.
The site is outlined in red. It includes, this is an old aerial, so that lot towards below the building is now a parking lot. My apologies, I just don't have an updated aerial. But to your right on the screen, or the right of the screen, that is New Orleans, and to the left is William Hilton Parkway. Will you all let me know if somebody doesn't know where we are? Okay, I don't see anybody, so we'll move on. The applicant wishes to provide a roof covering to an existing outdoor eating area to provide a safer option for diners at his establishment. As everyone knows, due to the pandemic, most diners would prefer to eat outside, which they currently do. When it rains, the establishment currently has no option other than to bring diners inside, and when it is busy, it is difficult to provide the mandated social distancing. The intent of the proposed design is to provide a flat roof with metal-wrapped fascia to match the color of the existing metal roof. The new post will be integrated within the existing guardrails and utilize the existing pier foundations. This project was withdrawn prior to a vote at the September 8th meeting. Staff recommends approval as submitted. So we're going to look at the cut sheets provided by the applicant of the fixtures under the roof. So this is the proposed heater. The proposed ceiling fan. The light fixture. And included here is to note, I'm sorry. I thought it was on this sheet. Yeah, there it is. The color temp is 3,000 for those light fixtures. So this is pictures of the existing building as it is. You can see the patio. The plan for the existing building. This is the new roof plan. So you can see the new flat roof extends out over that walk area right here and the steps. Elevations with the new flat roof. A section through the proposed porch or roof covering. All fixtures are up under the ceiling and between the ceiling and the roof, so they're all concealed. I'm sorry, staff recommends approval as submitted, and this concludes staff's presentation.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I think Ms. Remke was probably the only one that wasn't here for the last time this came up. It appears that they've addressed our suggestions, I guess, from last meeting, unless somebody's picked up on something. So after introductions,
Michael?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I do have a question. And maybe it was resolved last time, I don't know, but
Okay, go ahead.
could we look at the first drawing with the four drawings on there of the different
Well, can
sides?
we let the applicant do their presentation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we'll go through the usual questions. I just
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was
Okay.
more or less just kind of an opening statement. So let's go ahead and give the applicant their time. If they would please introduce themselves, and then you'll have 10 minutes once the introductions are over.
Yes, this is Kevin Grenier from KRA Architecture and Design. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, thanks, Kevin.
Okay, good. Chris did a great presentation. We addressed, I believe, most, if not all, of the comments from the last meeting, and we hope that we will receive a positive feedback.
All right, thank you. So hang tight, and I know we'll have at least one question from the foreshadowing, but we'll go through the list, our usual discussion. So we'll start off with Mr. McAllister.
Yeah, once again, I appreciate you addressing all the comments from our last meeting. I think you've done a great job. Nothing to add.
All right, thank you, David. Mr. Karstens.
There we go. I just want to confirm that the color within the light kit on the fan will match the ceiling fixtures, just as a courtesy to your diners, not having the two tones, or different color, different temperature lights. And then just confirming the down rod, as far as obviously in your section, it shows one that's a little longer than I guess the stock 2 or 3 inch one that comes with the light. So just understanding the relationship between the ceiling and those recessed light fixtures. But otherwise, I appreciate the installation as far as the flat roof, and I think everything's setting up well. So just confirming those down rods and the temperature of the lights for both the light kit within the fan and the recessed lights.
All right, Kevin, can you address that?
I don't have any issue with what's being recommended, so I will agree to that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Was that it, Judd?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, all right. All right, Annette, we won't forget you. Ms. Lippert?
Thank you. I just have two quick questions related to plans to elevation drawings. One, I think this might just be a referencing glitch that the existing elevation is identical to the new elevation. So I would say, just for record purposes, to get a corrected existing or drawing submitted for that. And then on the plan relative to the elevation at the main stair, there appears to be a center handrail on the plan that I'm not seeing on the elevation. And I just wanted clarification on that.
Can you go to the photo of the existing stair? Yeah, that exists.
Yep, there it is.
That exists. Okay. So, I mean, while not a DRB concern per se, as in, but that one column relative to that center handrail seems to me to have a slightly awkward relationship, but as far as actually being able to use that, but not enough of a concern that I would voice as something needing to change, but just something to maybe, I just wanted to mention it, that it sort of jumped out at me.
Annette,
That's all I have.
what column are you referring to?
If we go back to the plan, there's one column that is right here, yes.
I think that's a light fixture.
That's a light fixture.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, the columns are in the handrail. Yeah, the columns are in the handrail, correct, Kevin? All of them? Except the ones.
Yes, they're integrated into the existing handrails. Or guardrail, I should say.
Yeah. And then aren't there some between the first row and the second row of tables, right where the hand is? Those are also columns, correct?
Correct. Those sit on existing piers.
Okay. All right.
I see. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, I misread that. And so.
Yeah, that would be a bad spot for a column. So.
Well, that's what I wanted to comment on.
Annette, before you click off, what was your first comment? I wasn't writing fast enough about the corrected drawing. Could you repeat that, please?
Well, what is called out as detail 2 on A2.0, existing New Orleans elevation, seems to show the columns and canopy of the new elevation versus the.
She is correct. She is correct.
Small canopies. So I would just request an updated PDF for the record.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And are you finished, Annette?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Remke, Debbie.
Okay, I'd like to go back to drawing P1-0. Okay, the photos. The photo in the bottom left-hand corner, this is where I don't quite understand what's going on. We've got all the windows that have what I'm going to call a lattice, the X. Okay, so they're across the long side where we're going to start the roof underneath those, and then they turn the corner, and they're underneath those too. But then, if you're making this a flat roof, it looks to me like it's going to go over the top of those clear story windows over the doors. Am I misseeing that?
Kevin, can you answer that one?
Yeah, it's the clear story windows do not line up. So we are going to have to either abandon one of them or figure out some sort of flashing detail, because she's right, it's going to touch something somewhere. We're trying the best we can to avoid as many clear stories as possible.
Okay. Okay, so it's a true flat roof. It looks, in your drawing A301, it looks like there is a little bit of a slope to it, but it would not slope the correct way to clear that window.
Correct. It slopes towards the parking lot, and it's collected in the gutter system.
Mm-hmm. But in this drawing, it shows the clear story windows below, which might be the case if you can cut them off somehow, but they're not really below there. The roof kind of runs right through the top of the window.
That's a good catch. Kevin, would your preference be to, well, obviously I think you want to keep all the ones with the X in it and then just modify that glass above the door?
I think that's the best way.
Okay. We'll put
it's tackle the oddball and leave all the rest, unimpeded.
Okay. Well, that'll be part of the motion. So I just wanted to make sure that was your preferred solution. Yeah. All right. As a good observation, Ms. Remke. Thank you. Do you have any more, Debbie? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
Okay. Ms. Voss, Kathy.
Thank you to Mr. Karstens, Ms. Lempert, and Ms. Remke for your comments and finding those details that I didn't see. So The rest of it looks okay to me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Yep, I think everybody covered it. I think Kevin did a good job responding to our comments. Kevin, can you confirm, please, that there is no exposed conduit, that everything's going to be hidden?
There is a note in the drawings that says exactly that.
Okay, all right. So we're going to at least have a short conditions list here, which I would assume would be the clear story over the door, confirm the color, the lights, and the fan are coordinated, the corrected elevation, and I think that was it. So I'll probably ask Ms. Lippert if she, when we get to a motion, if she would like to make the motion. Chris, does staff have anything follow up on this?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Annette, would you like to make a motion?
I will gladly make a motion for DRV 001947-2020 for approval with the following conditions: confirming that the fan light and the recessed light have the same color temperature, confirming the length of the fan rod, submitting an updated A 2.0 for the record with the existing elevation shown, shortening the clear story above the double doors on A 3.0 to allow the roof structure to bypass, and although it's noted on the drawings, with confirmation that no conduit be exposed.
Thank you. And could you add that all of this can be reviewed at staff level?
Yes, let me amend my my statement to note that the conditions of approval only require staff approval.
All right, thank you. If anyone would like to further comment before we vote on the motion, could you just raise your hand? All right, would someone like to second the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a approval with conditions by Ms. Lippert and a second by Ms. Foss. As roll is called, could you please vote yes or no? Ms. Teresa?
Miss Lippert,
Yes.
Miss Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Miss Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes, so motion passes unanimously. Thanks for your time, Kevin, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to Port Royal Plaza Renovations, DRB 001961-2020. Chris?
Highway 278, the site is outlined in red on this slide. Highway 278 runs across the screen and down towards the bottom on the right-hand side. Matthews Drive is on the left-hand side, and you can see the Matthews Drive traffic circle there at the Port Royal Shopping Center. Just some points of interest are the old Sam's Club building is right here. It received DRB approval to add 2 facades on each side of the old Sam's Club entrance, and there was some landscaping required in front of it. Of interest too is the Sea Turtle Marketplace and the recently approved Parker's location there at the corner of Matthews and 278. as well as the gas station on the opposite corner of Matthews and 278 that was approved. It's probably been maybe 2 years ago. And I understand they're about to move forward with construction on that. Does everybody know where we are, or does anybody have any questions? Please let me know right now. Seeing none, we're going to move on. So the intent of this project is to modify the existing facades of the vacant tenant spaces at 95 Matthews Drive. Currently, there is a Planet Fitness occupying the central tenant space. The applicant is looking to develop the facade to the right of the proposed, to the right of Planet Fitness for a proposed AutoZone, and to the left of Planet Fitness for a tenant to be determined. Additionally, the submittal includes an option for the tenant space to the left to be split into 2 spaces, requiring a third facade on the eastern facing elevation. So in other words, the elevation that opens out into Port Royal Shopping Center out here. So on that side of the face. Adjacent to and that would be adjacent to the existing gazebo structure, and we'll see a picture of that. The proposed modifications to the north-facing facade, adjacent to Planet Fitness, are minimal in nature, with a small raised parapet element for each tenant, in keeping with the geometry and color palette of the remainder of Port Royal Plaza Shopping Center. Additionally, storefront glazing entrances are proposed, in keeping with the rhythm and finish of the storefront glazing of Planet Fitness. The potential third element on the eastern facade mimics the breezeway of the existing center in both geometry, proportion, and materials. All finishes will match the remainder of the shopping center. Since the previous submission, the applicant has worked to address the comments from both the members of the board as well as staff. Please note that the following items have been added. Additional sidewalk has been added along the front of the existing Planet Fitness space to connect the proposed AutoZone with the adjacent tenant. This includes the addition of new landscaping beds along its length. A landscaping plan has been added to the documents showing additional landscaping around the existing gazebo, as well as the potential third tenant canopy area. This refreshes the existing landscaping island throughout the parking lot and adds understory evergreen trees between the parking lot and Matthews Drive. The existing fencing columns at the rear corner of the site have been included in the scope. The rear wall of the existing building is called to be painted to match the remainder of the facades. The dumpster enclosure has been added to the plan for clarity in its location. The proposed AutoZone facade has been relocated to be centered over the proposed entrance doors as requested. A note has been added to address the need for the existing downspouts along the front facade to be rerouted beneath the sidewalk and through the curb to spill onto the asphalt at the parking lot in lieu of spilling onto the sidewalk as currently designed. This project was withdrawn prior to a vote at the September 8th meeting. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. 1, provide a site plan for review by staff that addresses the following. A, dimensions of the proposed changes to the drive aisle and landscape area addition. So they need to show those additions, and we'll talk about that as we run through some slides. Reconsideration of the pedestrian access through the new landscape area. And C, specify or label the curb or other protection of the landscape area on the plans. 2, revisions of the planting plan for review by staff that address the following. Replace the existing pears with canopy trees, not palms. Add additional palms, hollies, etc. to the landscape area between the building and the drive aisle. So in other words, some additional height. And C, planting areas are thin between the building and the drive aisle, so they need to be, the quantity needs to be increased. And add taller plants along the wall behind the existing gazebo to break up the expansive wall. So we're going to start, as we did the last time, we're going to start at the back of the building, and we're going to walk around the building sort of in these pictures. So this is the back wall and columns that have now been included in the scope and will be painted. The columns will be painted to match the building, the column detail. That's the back of the building that again is proposed to be repainted to match the existing facades, the other facades. Sort of a view from Matthews into this area. That will be the side of the new proposed AutoZone as viewed from Matthews. So this is the area that will be planted with, I believe it's hollies, but they're small understory trees to help screen this large wall here, which is the side. Again, this is viewed from Matthews. Just another detail of that, or a picture of that. Now we're turning the corner to the front of the shopping center. So that's looking back onto that wall and parking, and then Matthews on the right-hand side. Again, a view of that area from essentially the parking lot to Matthews. So turning the corner here, there's that existing live oak that's to remain. Okay, now the concern here is that there are really two givens. There's the curb on this side and then the face of the building. What staff is looking for is an overall dimension to see how this space is broken up. Based on the LMO, the width of the drive aisle in this area, because there's no parking, only has to be 20 foot. So that leaves X amount of feet over here for both a sidewalk and planting. And staff would like to see that maxed out. Additionally, narrowing that down will slow traffic in front of the building, which is a good thing for pedestrians. Just another view looking a little bit further down the building, looking down. You can see there's already an existing bump out here. Now we're further down towards the corner, looking back towards Matthews. Of note are the existing pear trees here that are in a serious decline. There's been some pruning done on them. Their structure appears to be compromised, and honestly, the pears are shorter-lived plants, and they're in decline. We've even got one here that's, I guess, been replaced or something because they're not consistent. But just some views of those trees. Another view of the pear tree in that island in front. So we're rounding the corner. That's what the landscaping is around the corner in the parking lot. And this is that large expanse of wall right to the right and left of the gazebo that needs to be broken up. And there to the left of the gazebo. This is where the proposed facade might be added. It should be clear, staff would hope that it's clear that if this is not added, that what the landscaping requirement will be, again, to break up that wall, if that option is not exercised. Just these are the landscape islands out from the gazebo, looking back in towards the shopping center. Sort of a composite of the area, the building. This is the proposed color board that you saw last week, at the last meeting, and was available earlier this week to be viewed in person outside of Town Hall. This is the existing building. We're kind of torqued a little bit. This is Matthews Drive with the circle. So you can see Planet Fitness here with the proposed AutoZone location here, and the possibly two tenant spaces out here. So this tenant space would access from a facade here that cuts into and would access from the Port Royal Shopping Center parking lot, and this one would face this way and you would access it from the parking lot, same as Planet Fitness. Again, this is the old Sam's Club building. A little bit better illustration of that. Again, we're kind of rotated a little bit differently. This is the proposed dumpster enclosure. And this is the building site plan. What's missing here is really we don't know what this width is to the face of the curb on the parking stall, on the landscape islands. A section through the facade and showing connections to the building. This is the option for the eastern facade, essentially out by the coming out. I'm sorry, wait a minute. I'm sorry. No, this is the proposed facade to the left of Planet Fitness, and to the right of Planet Fitness. This would be the AutoZone location. And down at the bottom would be the location on the eastern facade that they could possibly exercise. And this is the proposed landscape plan. Again, staff's concern is to make sure that this width is optimized. In other words, we need, at a minimum, need just 20 foot for the drive aisle. But what exactly does that leave us for the sidewalk and the planting area? Additionally, there's opportunities for more height, get more height in here. I know it's a tight spot, but they're proposing some palms. There could be some additional palms or maybe something else here, again, to help break up that building. Staff's concern is that pear trees here are in decline and need to be replaced with a shade tree, a canopy tree. And then the other thing is they're proposing just one smaller tree here to break up that large mass of wall. There needs to be a larger tree or something to balance the size of the wall that's exposed and blank. You can see here they've added the understory trees as requested to help break up and mitigate that wall when viewed from Matthews. That concludes staff's presentation. Mr. Chairman, at your discretion, is there any questions?
For you?
For me, yes.
No, just I think this is going to be a landscape heavy comment session, so I'm gonna so our landscape architects, I urge you to take good notes because I'm probably going to call on you to make a motion. But we have to go through our, well, thank you, Chris, by the way. We'll go through the applicant. Applicant, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 10 minutes to embellish Chris's presentation.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we got an echo from you. Say something.
All right, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, that was good. Okay.
Okay, great. My name is Gretchen Fisher. I'm with MJM Architects. I think I've met most of y'all on the last meeting when we presented this the first time. We did try to take care and acknowledge your comments and incorporate them into this next presentation. I think we managed to address most of the architectural concerns that there were. I understand there may still be some landscape items that need to be discussed. I do have, I believe, some representatives from the ownership group as well. So I don't have much more to add, but I think I'd like to turn it over to Fox Johnson and David Bloom, if they're on the call, to maybe continue talking about the landscaping just a little bit more.
Good afternoon. I'm David Bloom. I attended one of the earlier meetings involving the signs, and as some of you may recall, I'm the original developer from 35 years ago. I'm the old guy that actually planted those Bradford Pears. A couple of comments I want to make, and then I'll turn it over to Scott Smith and Fox. Scott Smith is the landscape architect designer that will discuss the changes that have been made that we think have addressed more of the comments, and staff seems to be agreeing. But one issue I have is we're talking about a 20-foot drive aisle, and that's actually a main entrance for the former Ballard building. No issue was made about this with Sam's, and actually both for this building and the Sam's building, all the fire risers are in the front of the building. So I think we're overlooking the fact we've tried to add some planters in there, keeping in mind that we need a fire lane there, and so it's actually not a 20-foot drive aisle required. So I think we all should address the issue of the need for a fire aisle with the risers being there. As to the Bradford Pears, I would like for everybody to consider the fact that these trees are 8 to 20 inches DBH. They're 12 to 20 foot tall. They have outlived an average Bradford pear because they've been structurally pruned by removing side shoots and limbing at a 45-degree angle. They, like me, are old. I'm 90 years old. I planted them 35 years ago. And with their size and magnitude, I don't know if they should actually be whacked no more than I should be. And I don't think that I'm ever going to be happy to do away with those trees short of an arborist telling us they're not going to live or make it. I know they're not in favor, but there was a recent University of Mississippi report said just because Bradford pears are no longer in favor, there's no reason to rush out, cut them down unless they're unhealthy or threaten property. So I'd like the DRB to consider that. With that, I'll turn it over to Scott Smith to explain the additional plantings that were made since the original submission on the landscape plan.
Good afternoon, everybody. If I understand the previous comments correctly, the understory evergreens facing Matthews Drive, I'm assuming they're good. And I think Gretchen, we talked briefly the other day, but about potentially widening that bed directly in front of Planet Fitness. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that or not, as to how wide that bed, could be.
We
Now, as far as the other
suggested
comments,
4 feet.
I'm sorry.
We suggested 4 feet due to the fire truck issue. I think it shows 2 feet now, but we agreed that we could increase the Planet Fitness planner to 4 feet to double what's shown on the plan.
Okay. Now, as far as over there by the gazebo, yes, I have Eagleston hollies, which, they get about 20 to 25 feet tall with a spread of about 10 to 12 feet. So I don't know. Do you all want to get something that's more like a southern magnolia that's going to get a lot bigger? Or we could do, I guess we could do like 2 Eagleston hollies on either side of the gazebo. And then as far as,
sorry to address that to address that question when we go through our board members. Stay tuned, and then we'll have that discussion on your question.
Okay. All right. And as far as the plantings in the islands, I tried to, stay the course and not bring in any other different types of plant material. So if you had a row of Burford hollies and then, some open spaces, I tried to mimic what was there. So therefore, you can see in on the island plantings, I have wax myrtles, Burford hollies, azaleas. So they all have a purpose of being there because it's, you want to keep the continuity and not mix things up too much. I think I addressed everything, all the open areas pretty good of where plants need to be placed in the islands. And as far as, the one main aisle in the planting bed where I've got 17 wax myrtles, a lot of the existing shrubs are in deterioration. They're not doing that well, so I'm just going to suggest replacing, put 17 wax myrtles in. But really, I think overall, the landscape plan should meet most of the criteria, and with some minor exceptions. And on that note, I'll pass it over to Fox.
David, you want to just finish? I'm on board with everything that you've discussed.
No, I think I made all the comments that I needed to make.
I don't think I have anything to add.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Well, everybody stay online, obviously, because we're going to go through each of the board members and to all our board members, but specifically our landscape architects. Can you address the questions that Scott had during his monologue, as well as the staff comments? And Chris, Darnell, this question's for you. Oh, never mind. Answered my own question. Never mind. So let's go through the order. David McAllister.
All right. First of all, I want to again thank the applicant for the effort on addressing our previous comments. I think the architecture looks great. I believe in the last meeting somebody made the observation that the AutoZone facade was a little off center on the door. And once I saw it at the last meeting, I couldn't unsee it, but I think it looks great now. So appreciate that. I do have some site and landscape comments and questions. One is regarding the planter and the hardscape in front of Planet Fitness. Again, I appreciate you guys listening to us and providing that. But when I look at sheet A001 and A102. I have a hard time just understanding what's proposed in terms of what's hardscape or what's planter. So I think bottom line is I think we probably need a site plan that clarifies some of this, as staff suggested, with dimensions. You know, as far as the drive aisle, I feel like I can't really speak intelligently about it because I don't know how wide it really is. I don't know how wide the proposed planter is or the sidewalks are. I just don't really have a sense of scale of any of that. So in my mind, I think it would be appropriate if, you know, just a site plan was provided that could be reviewed by staff or one of the board members, just to, you know, for us to understand what we're approving. And in that plant bed in front of, let's see, Planet Fitness, I think muley grass is proposed. One of the comments I had, so I think it would be appropriate if we had some evergreen there, just a little more substantial. And I think that, you know, would give it more of a year-round presence. Let's see. As far as the landscape, over where the potential tenant is going to go on the left side, I do think there should be a little bit more planting and foundation plantings. You know, not knowing whether that's going to be in or out. You know, what I'm seeing right here, I assume it's just going to be turfed all the way up to it. So in this scenario, I think it would be appropriate to have foundation plantings. And then if it's gone, if you guys don't do that option, then you know, you would be covered with some proposed plantings. Let's see. I assume that there is going to be a curb and gutter. It was a little unclear on the plans, but there's an existing curb, so I assume that's going to be part of the new planter and sidewalk improvements. Let's see. One comment about plant material. In the past, we've asked applicants not to use ligustrum just because it, you know, it can potentially get the berries and it can spread. So I would ask that the Jack Frost ligustrum be replaced with a different species. Let's see. And as far as the Bradford Pears, I definitely appreciate applicants' explanation and defending the trees. I appreciate that. I'm a little torn on it. You know, they don't look great long-term. Bradford Pears, if they've been there 35 years, you know, they're probably getting close to the end of their lifespan. And I think that's why people have shied away from them over the years, is they just have not stood the test of time. I'm a little torn about it because I appreciate that it does provide that vertical screening and it does, you know, provide that cover in the parking lot. You know, I would like to see an overstory tree, you know, a live oak or something there. But to be honest, I'm not sure that it would do well there with the median size. It's so small. So I'm honestly kind of on the fence there. You know, the code requires an overstory tree, but I'm not sure that would be successful without doing, you know, some curb and road work and stuff in that area. So I'm going to reserve my opinion on that and may come back to it. I'd like to hear what, you know, Judd and some other folks have to say about that. And in general, let me go through the staff comments. Staff did make some good observations. I think I already mentioned providing some more additional landscaping over by the gazebo, and one of the applicants mentioned or questioned whether a magnolia or something bigger would be appropriate there. I think something with a little more height and a stronger presence would be appropriate, whether it's a magnolia or live oak. Something just a little bit bigger would I think be more successful. And see if I missed anything. I think that's most of my comments. biggest thing for me is, I think we need to see a site plan that has a little more information as far as dimensions go. But that's my comments.
All right, thank you, David. Mr. Karstens.
I'm going to pick up where David left off in regards to where we were looking at the site. I too am in favor of a dimension site plan. To Mr. McAllister's point, I think that one corner where you have the current Eagleston would be a good opportunity for an overstory tree, considering that there is a live oak at the other end of that frontage. So, that lower corner you can see on the site plan, maybe that would be the opportunity for a live oak. I'd also recommend upsizing those live oaks in those adjacent planting islands right there. Considering that Port Royal Plaza's parking lot is so open and that there is no median dividing the parking aisles, we need as much height and kind of anchoring on the ends as we can get. I think the comments across the front of the building are pretty well founded between staff and Mr. McAllister as far as that 4-foot width sounds a lot more amenable, and having more of an evergreen presence there will help. And having breaks at the end of the parking aisles, I think that was a staff comment also. So being able to get the pedestrian out of the parking aisle and across to a safe sidewalk directly across, not having to have them, find their way diagonally. In regards to the Eagleston on Matthews Drive, I'm good with those. I think a full plant schedule, calling out installation sizes of all the material will help out a lot, because those Eaglestons can be called out as full to ground. That way we're not getting tree form, we're getting the full height and barrier associated with those. So I need to see a full plant schedule. And looking at the parking area, I have to say, between the timber curbs and the older plantings, it's a really hard area to park, especially opening your doors if you're anywhere near those islands. So I understand trying to be consistent when it comes to the plant species that are found within those islands, but I think this is an opportunity where the islands that separate parking bays, yes, those can fill up that space. But any plantings that are proposed where we're taking out older material, or there's a lack of older material in those islands that, basically abut come into the parking areas and separate lines of parking. Let's try to keep that plant material as far away from the parking as we can. Yeah, kind of on those edges. We need to plant at least 3 feet from the back of curb, just to help accommodate car doors and, people getting in and out, so they're not getting in and out right on shrubs. I know the timber curbs being 18 inches in some places even makes it hard for people just to open their doors in general. And I know that's not part of this plan, but really looking at this parking lot, we're just going to try to ease the use of it in that regard. Finally, Bradford Pears, I'm in favor of an arborist report, but honestly, with the failure of limbs, there's a liability associated with that, especially as they get older. Considering we're thinking about sable palmettos across the front of the building, this might be the opportunity to have a small streetscape section, considering we're reducing the width, or potentially reducing the width of this roadway, where we have those smaller islands at the end of the parking. I would not be opposed to having those end of islands actually be palmettos. If it sets up a streetscape, just specifically across the facade of the building here in this area that we're considering, Where the Bradford Pears are coming out, I'd be in favor of palmettos matching across. Really, that way, it's less of it's as much of a traffic calming as it is establishing that frontage and that facade just for this specific area in those islands. So that's my thought on the Bradford Pears and the treatment of the end of the islands. I'm sure I may circle back to something, but hopefully I try to work my way around the plan as much as possible. I'll tell you though, wax myrtles in parking lots is a lot of maintenance. And I think that those older ones have been shown, you really got to come in and hedge them quite a bit. So going forward, I'd recommend, sticking with dwarf varieties and sticking with the evergreens that, this might be the opportunity to start phasing out some of these things that require so much maintenance and upkeep. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judd. Scott, just to let you know, when we go through all the board members, we'll get you back in on the conversation because, like I said, this is a landscape-heavy conversation. So you're not muted. You'll have a chance to come back on. So next is Ms. Lippert.
Thank you. I appreciate the shifts on the new sort of entry canopies. I think that does make a big difference of not crossing a step and plan. I have one question for Chris. Is a lighting plan required?
A lighting plan is not required unless they are replacing lights. And it is staff's understanding that this plan does not include the replacement of any parking lot lights, and that there are no lights under the canopy, the existing canopy, or any lights proposed under the new canopies.
And existing wall packs are remaining as is? I guess that's a question to the applicant.
Gretchen, you can answer if.
Yes, any existing wall packs that are there would just be remaining.
Okay. Trying to go through my various notes I wrote down. The other question I had was I heard Chris talk about the downspout that we discussed last time as being brought underneath the pavement. I guess I'm not seeing the gutter or downspouts on the elevation, and therefore I'm having a hard time knowing what is happening there. Also, especially on the future tenant option, will that also have a gutter around and some downspouts? Again, question to the applicant, please.
Chris, could you pull up a photo of the front just so we can see the downspouts that are there? There's not a lot that I could see in existing downspouts. Obviously, there's this one not so lovely one that's on the front. The intent with adding the new facade work, obviously the one on the eastern facade would have new downspouts. The other two, the AutoZone and then the proposed other tenant that faces north, would just be tying into whatever the existing gutter scenario is. And then the plan would just be to cut out the sidewalk where those downspouts land and bury those downspouts, bury the extension of them so that they spill onto grade at the parking lot. I do not have those exact locations, but that's definitely something that would get incorporated with a, more developed set of construction documents.
Because if I'm seeing it right on the photos, that downspout that we've been talking about is where the new entry canopy is about to go. If I'm counting or seeing based on the windows, maybe I'm not. Yeah, because it's one after sort of the
You're
solid
correct.
panel.
You are correct. So that one would need to get relocated, and we would have to do something similar, running it down along a column, but then concealing it under the sidewalk instead of that little boot that it's got right now. So we would have to modify that location.
And so I guess my comment on that really is that whether it's just staff review or depending on how the motion ends up being made, a clearer definition of where downspouts are going to be and how they really get treated, both on the option and the Planet Fitness, AutoZone, and future tenant facades, I think needs to be incorporated in that updated drawing. I think everybody's kind of alluded to it already. I think it needs to be really clearly stated on option 1 versus option 2 being what happens if the future side tenant does not come to be, and because like there's a canopy over that door on elevation 5 on A8.801. I presume that would remain in place if the side tenant does not come. So just clarity on the two options, clarity on gutters and downspouts. And I had one final question. I believe you're not touching the roof of the gazebo, even though elevation 6 suggests that there's a modification.
That is correct. There's no plan on modifying that gazebo. We just was not able to model the design with the circle and the triangle. Did not get that all modeled in time.
Yeah, it just looked like there was standing seam that went over that, so I just wanted to confirm.
You're correct. It's not super accurate. So, but no, there's no plan on modifying that gazebo.
All right. So based on that, those are my only comments, because I will defer to the landscape architects on all planting comments. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Annette. Ms. Remke.
Okay, I'm also going to defer to the landscape architects because that's certainly not my bailiwick. But I had a couple of questions. Could we look at the planned facade, the front facade of the building, showing Planet Fitness and the two other? My question really is about signage. As I go around this shopping center, I see that all the rest of the businesses have their sign on a frieze right underneath the roof. And we've changed this over here to these two signs that have the peak on them. And first of all, I wonder why we can't put it on the frieze like the rest of the shopping center, be consistent. But if we have to have these, I'm really offended by the peaks on them. When I look at these, I see the words Western wear and saloon. These signs don't have anything to do with anything else in the shopping center with those peaks on them. So if we have to have this type of signage, I would like to see them just as rectangles that more closely mimic what Planet Fitness has on their signage, maybe with a trim around what I see on the Planet Fitness. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's some kind of stucco design, but something that looks more similar to Planet Fitness if we can't just put signage on the frieze itself like the rest of the shopping center. This doesn't play with anything else that's there on the site. So that's my suggestion. Signage, landscaping, have at it. So there's my comments.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Ms. Foss.
I appreciate everyone's comments. I didn't catch the part that the east elevation was a maybe and a maybe not. So I totally agree that we need to see a what if scenario. What if it's not there? What if it is there? I agree with staff conditions. Thank you for being so thorough. If the planter depth is only 4 feet, we need to go for that, but I agree we need to see some dimensions so we can see that. I would love to see overstory trees where the pear trees are, and Mr. McAllister suggested that those islands weren't deep enough for overstory trees, but what's the possibility of going into the parking area and widening those medians so we could have some nice overstory trees in there? If we're going to be playing with some curbing up by the building, what's the big deal of playing with some curbing on those medians is my question. Palmetto palms, as far as I know them, are kind of low lying, and I drive kind of a lower level car. It's low to the ground. A lot of places on the island, I can't see when I'm going to turn left across because there's these grasses and taller plants that kind of block my view. So I want to make sure that any of the plantings that are on the medians where you turn a corner do not block people's view. And I think that's all for my notes, but thank you everyone for all your comments too.
Before I go, my turn, Kathy, and then I'm asking Annette the same question. What's your comment or your thoughts on Miss Remke's comment on the little peaks on the above the storefronts? Go ahead, Kathy, you go first.
I'm not bothered by the peaks. I understand your comment. I don't get the western thing going. It just kind of, in that long expanse of that building, I think it helps show you where the entrances are. That's my thought.
Okay. Annette, what about you?
I'm also not bothered by them. This might be a super tall order to Chris. I don't know when this was, but at the other end of that shopping center, there's also, I guess, what used to be, I believe, the Bilo, and that was also split into 3. And I think they also brought some sort of facade elements for the 3 tenants into that. Is there any chance you could put your hands on that elevation as it was approved?
Well, the Bilo is the now Planet Fitness.
Oh, sorry. No, then I'm thinking of, there's at the
Sam's
other
Club.
end of the,
Sam's Club.
that's the
Sam's
one.
Club. Yeah, okay.
The answer to that is yes, I can possibly do that. It might take me a minute.
All right, we'll talk while Chris is trying to locate that. Then we'll follow up on it. Kathy?
I do remember, and that was a good point to bring up, Annette. Yes, they did bring in some canopy type, gable type awnings on the old Sam's Club for the next renovation.
Okay. And Gretchen, is that peak due to the fact that there's a gable behind it to shed water? Is that a function? Does that have a physical function?
Yes, the design had a couple different purposes. One, which was touched upon, was to make it a little more obvious where the entrances are on this facade. And then 2, that peak does help tie in where we're tying this gable into kind of the mansard roof that's behind it and just dealing with the shedding of water instead of it crashing into a vertical surface.
Okay, yeah, so there's a gable roof behind that's shedding water, correct?
Yes.
If you were to tear away the front, okay. All right, because I think that's apparent in section. I think that's where I saw that in the section. You can see how high up there we go. There's the former Sam's Club picture right there. So it's got a tie-in, I think. Yeah. Annette, you asked for that drawing. Any follow-up comment?
No, this is exactly why I wanted to see it, because I thought to remember that it had a similar shape. I realized at a different scale, you know, there were the side ones that were smaller, but in that sense, I seem to recall that this is where the shopping center is heading. So while I understand that currently signage is on the freezes in a lot of the places, I can appreciate that businesses want a slightly stronger definition of their entry. So in that sense, I'm okay with the proposed canopies.
All right. Yeah, okay, I guess it's my turn now. Yeah, I didn't give Gretchen the props that I gave everybody else before this, that I think you did a good job responding to our prior comments. Question on the AutoZone elevation, Gretchen. All the other storefronts are mostly threes, triples. When you get past the AutoZone door, those turn into wider doubles. Chris, could you put up sheet 801, A801? Yes, see right there to the right of the AutoZone entrance. They turn into doubles, and those are brand new. All the existing ones are, just curious, is there a rhyme or a reason? Change that up?
Actually, on the last presentation, back in early September that y'all saw, we did have those divided as the three to kind of keep that consistent rhythm across. I've been working with the AutoZone architect, and he specifically requested to go to two-bay storefront. I didn't press him for a reason as to why, but it's possible that they'd be willing to go back to the three bays. I think it maybe is just more in keeping with their brand look elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, that was the thing that stood out to me. You align the entrances like we asked, that all works great. The little postmodern gable roof over there's, I'm fine with it, that Ms. Grimke had brought up. I think that'll just kind of, I don't think it stands out or doesn't stand out one way or another. So but the fact that everything else is basically a triple window and those are doubles are what stood out to me. So my preference would be that they go back to threes, and just don't tell AutoZone. But I think architecturally, everybody's covered what I had on my list. And that, you had your hand up? Annette?
I just had a question, because if those two doubles go back to a triple, what happens to the single wide one? Because there's that step in plan.
Well, there's a single wide one at the end of Planet Fitness. It's a little bit of an oddball. And by oddball, I mean it's a single and it's a little fatter than the others. You can see it right. Let me move the hand to the left, right there.
Yeah. So then, I mean, should it become exactly that dimension if it remains the only oddball wide if the other two go to triples?
Yeah, it's not a big hang up for me. That's just the one thing that stood out. But if, are those, Gretchen, are those window sizes dictated by what? Could they be if they needed to be a foot wider, can they be a foot wider to make them look like the other windows, or, 8 inches narrower? What's regulating the opening, the actual rough opening?
So for the opening, the single opening that's adjacent to the entrance of the AutoZone, I believe it was due to the shift in the floor plan. Trying to remember exactly how that landed. As far as the actual width of the opening, we could play around with them. I was trying to keep them fitting in between column bays.
Yeah.
And then keeping them fairly consistent, all the new ones added fairly consistent in their dimension.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say, see what you can do. Because if that one to the furthest right to match the other triples that you have, it looks like that opening would have to be like a foot wider, maybe. So you don't end up with a bunch of slivers. But I'm just looking at a small scale drawing. And there's the one furthest to the right, that double where the hand is. If you divided that into 3, it would probably be a narrower triple than, say, the one down by the tenant all the way to the left. See that triple down there? If that could be.
They're identical in width.
So they are, okay.
It would look just like the opposite end if I did it over.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to see those 2 doubles go to triples. And if that one wide, that one wide window to the right of the door is an oddball, then it's an oddball. Not everything exactly matches here. I mean, the storefront, like 2 bays over from the AutoZone door, is something totally different than everything else too. That one just to the right there, that one's different too. So we're going to get a little bit of an oddity, but we prefer that to be a triple. Okay, so we belabored that enough. Let's go back and revisit landscaping. And what I'd like to get out of this, if our landscape architects are comfortable with a motion that could have staff review and one of you guys, or all staff review, I'm going to leave that up to your best judgment. But let's have one more round of conversation between, and of course anyone can chime in if they'd like, but between who needs to be in on this? Scott, and David and Judd. So let's start with Mr. McAllister for a second round. If you'd like to add anything, specific questions for Scott, and Scott, you may reply without asking to chime in here. So it's an short open discussion here.
All right.
Go ahead, David.
I think Judd made a lot of good observations as well. Regarding the planting being back from the curb a little bit. You see this sometimes in commercial settings. If shrubs are planted too close to the curb, car bumpers move over, doors open, and it damages the plants. In agreement with that. As far as the Bradford Pears, in between my comments, I Googled the average lifespan of a Bradford pear, and consistently it's anywhere from 15 to 20 years. Some people say 25 years. So I still stick with my original comment that they're probably at the end of their lifespan. I like Judd's suggestion on palmettos. I think it's a reasonable balance between not asking them to, lose parking spaces and redo curbing and all that there. Because I think that's what's really going to be required for an overstory tree to be successful. And I think Ms. Foss was concerned about palmettos in the view corridor. And I think the difference is Judd was suggesting a full palm tree, that's 18, 20 feet tall, not a saw palmetto, which I think you were thinking of. So I'm kind of on board with that direction. I just, we're spending all this money to really freshen up the place. With new landscaping, the building's going to look great. And the reality is those trees aren't going to be there much longer. So I think this is an opportunity to go ahead and, get everything up to snuff. So that's my added 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Judd, would you like second round?
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think with the palms and the palmettos, the larger palms, if we can encourage staff to say that we're looking at a streetscape situation, especially if we reduce that road width, that's the feel and the goal that I'm looking at for that. That way, those islands don't have to be modified, and it's purely just modifying the curb and the sidewalk at the front of the building. Recommending on that facade, on the eastern facade of the building over by the gazebo, let's go ahead and get a overstory tree on that corner, and we can probably still keep the Eagleston that's suggested closer to the gazebo, but maybe just on the corner of the building, let's kind of get a live oak. Maybe even a live oak to match the two that'll be in the parking lot, which I'm going to recommend upsize to 4-inch, just to get us a little bit more, size to it. I know that they both take a little bit of time to pick up and get growing, but if we can upsize the two parking lot live oaks to 4-inch and have a matching one on the corner of that building, that'll help out a lot. And I'm comfortable with staff and either Mr. McAllister or myself, reviewing the site plan once it's resubmitted. And I think that was some of the outstanding things there.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, would you like to address their comments, staff comments, pro or cons, before we move to motion? And the one thing I don't know that anybody addressed was Mr. Bloom's comment about the fire lane. And before we get out, Chris, I'd like to, once we get done with the landscaping, get you to reply one more time on the landscaping from a staff perspective, and also the fire lane question. Go ahead, Scott. Floor is yours.
Well, thanks everybody for your comments. I think they were all good and very constructive. I really don't have any issues with anything. I definitely agree with trying to get some more dwarf evergreens on those end islands that are facing the drive aisle, so it won't impede sight lines. I like the other comments about placing plants at least 3 feet back from the curbs. That was a great suggestion. A lot of the stuff can get modified in my design for to accommodate that. I'll readdress that 4 foot wide planting area space once Gretchen, I think, can get me the new plans for that. But no, I think it was a very constructive meeting today. So.
All right. Thank you. Chris, do you have anything to follow up?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the fire lane, if I remember correctly, the fire marshal's issues on the renovations to the old Sam's Club entrance was that the branches encroaching into, if you will, a three-dimensional fire lane. So they wanted 14 foot, I believe, off the surface to be free and clear of any branches. The suggestion of the tree palmettos is a great plant for that, and I don't think that the fire marshal will have issues with that. We'll certainly run any planting plan or renovations to the road through the fire marshal for their review and input. At the same time, it comes back to staff and is circulated out to one of the board members. So we'll get the fire marshal's input, but if I remember correctly, it's maintaining that height clearance for branches in the fire lane. And staff would prefer to see the canopy trees, but I think David and Judd make very good points that those landscape islands are fairly narrow, and certainly a palmetto would work there easily. So we're right in line.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, Judd, you got your hand up?
Sorry, I just wanted to make one more comment in regards to since we're hitting on it right now. I went to Street View and I was checking out the Kroger at Shelter Cove, and right there at Shelter Cove, we've got palmettos in front of the Kroger and matching ones across that aisle. So it definitely creates an island aesthetic, and I think it's appropriate. And considering we're going to have that width, that'll really help to kind of, in essence, like I said, create that streetscape. And again, the focus is just in front of the building. We're not going to try to push this into the rest of the complex, but I just wanted to add that. So.
All right, sold me. All right, so I will ask for a motion here. I think Judd would be an excellent candidate to offer one, and with Mr. McAllister, a chance to supplement it at the end of the motion. And then Annette, I know you had 2 or 3 comments that we will probably add architecturally at the end of the motion. So, Mr. Carsons, if you are comfortable with it, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, and I can just reference staff comments when it comes down to it. I don't have to necessarily read all those off, do I?
You can reference their comments, but if any of them are different, such as the canopy tree, you need to make sure you exclude that one. Okay?
Yes. All right, I'll do my best.
All right.
I'm going to recommend approval with conditions for Port Royal Plaza renovation DRB 001961-2020 with the following, along with staff comments, the following conditions: that a updated site plan be provided and reviewed by staff, as well as one board member, one landscape architect board member, that within the beds at the front of the Planet Fitness building, the muley grass and loropetalum be substituted out for an evergreen, low evergreen shrub. The plantings along the eastern side of the building will include a live oak, a 4-inch caliper live oak on the corner. We are going to also request that the 2 live oaks on the eastern side within the parking lot islands be upsized to 4-inch. With the removal of the Bradford Pears across the parking islands across the front of the building, be replaced with sable palmettos to match those that are being installed at the front of the building. The spacing and location of those will be reviewed by staff and landscape architect as far as being appropriate. to not obscure signage or pedestrian circulation. The plantings within the planting aisles the new plantings, excuse me, will maintain a 3-foot clear area around the parking spaces. I'm going to allow Annette to kind of chime in on the downspout locations and treatments. And obviously, we're going to maintain our clear windows when it comes to vehicular safety zones. David, please help me out if I'm missing something, and I'll look for Annette to help out with as far as the gutters and the window treatments.
Yeah, if you're ready, I can add some of my notes to this.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to amend the current motion with further comments from Mr. McAllister. Go ahead, David.
Okay. Applicant is also to provide plant sizes in the planting schedule and replace the Jack Frost ligustrum with another more adaptive evergreen shrub. Let's see. Consider replacing the wax myrtles in the parking lot with dwarf variety shrub. And let's see. And I think there was a comment about needing to see a scenario of the side tenant with or without, what that looks like as well. And I think that's all my site and landscape comments.
All right, and we will have a further amendment of the current motion with comments from Ms. Lippert. Annette?
Yes, so I'd like to further amend in a way continuing on that the two options, both site-wise and architecture-wise, need to be clarified of what happens in each scenario. That the double windows at AutoZone go back to triple windows with the two single oddball windows to be reviewed as to whether they want to become more similar. All downspout locations be shown. A note that there are no light changes, light fixture changes, no lighting changes. And a note that there is no change to the existing gazebo. That's the end of my amendment.
All right, so we have an original motion from Mr. Carstens. Mr. Carstens, would you like to include the further amendments from Mr. McAllister, sorry, and Ms. Lippert to your original motion?
Yes, I amend my motion with the comments from my fellow board members.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have a cobbled motion. Would either of the remaining board members that were not part of that motion offer a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Ms. Foss. Chris, any further comments before we vote? Did we hit everything to staff's approval?
Yes, sir. No further comments. Thank you.
All right. All right. So, Ms. Teresa, would you please call roll?
Sorry.
Certainly. Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Carstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes. So motion with conditions passes unanimously. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And y'all may log off now and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
So we move on to board business. Chris, what do we have for board business today?
There's been a lot of discussion recently about setbacks and building heights as they relate to the DRB and the design guide. There was, well, just a lot of discussion, and there was some, well, I wanted to have an open discussion here today, given with some background on what the LMO says. And again, I just want to emphasize that. I want to have some open discussion. Want to start off with the difference between a setback and a buffer. And I'm not trying to be obnoxious about this. I myself often use them interchangeably, and I should not. To be clear, a setback is the setback from the property line that vertical construction can begin at. While a buffer is a reference to a vegetated area between the building and the property line. Generally, the buffer does not exceed the width of the setback, but it is not the entire width of the setback. In other words, you could possibly have a 30-foot setback from a property line and only a 20-foot buffer. So horizontal construction would be allowed up to the buffer. In other words, you could have parking lot out in front of your building that would be beyond the setback, but outside of the buffer. Is that completely, is that as clear as mud to everybody? I'm seeing some head shaking. So we can come back to that if there's any question. But the next thing I want to talk about is what is a by right development standard. And my apologies, I have misspelled by. It's not B-U-I, it's B-Y in the meeting outline. A by right, hold on, I'm going to share something. My apologies. Hold on for just a minute. I don't know what's going on here. It's not coming up. Still not sharing it. My apologies. A little bit of a glitch.
Chris, while you're pulling, oh, well, there you have it. I was going to say, while you're pulling that up, if you could, can you just tell me the name again of that diagonal that we looked at on the condo building? So that starts at the setback line, I believe it was.
Okay, here we go. That's a little bit further on, but we'll address that because you brought it up. So here you can see this is a street setback, and here's how it functions. So you have the setback distance, right? And then you have a height, and the height is measured from the base flood elevation. And at that point, somewhere out in space, you then have an angle that it angles back. So the building cannot be beyond that angle. And those angles are all described in, here, the setback. Here we go. So here's that table. adjacent street setback requirements. Okay, so there's all the listed uses here. And then these are the setbacks from the streets for those specific uses and the angle that we just looked at. Make sense?
Yes, per the drawing, it looks like the overhangs are allowed to cross that, just not the vertical part of the architecture.
That is correct. There are some architectural elements that can penetrate into that setback. That's correct. And those are actually, they're listed in the LMO. There's a list of them. Right,
Isn't it
just
like
there.
3 feet at the eave that can extend into it?
Yes, that's correct. A little bit further. Available setback encroachments. So you can see balconies, fire escapes, stairwells, chimneys, fireplaces, roof eaves and overhangs, awnings. I mean, that's the whole list.
Mm-hmm.
Spires, cupolas, domes, periphery.
That can encroach into the setback.
Okay, you're going to have to tell them that because I don't completely understand that myself.
All right.
This is, I have Nicole here to keep us all in line.
Thanks. So this table list that Chris has up on the screen lists the allowable setback encroachments. So there's a setback encroachment and then there's a setback angle encroachment. So there's certain things that are allowed to encroach into that angle plane, but then there's certain things that are allowed to encroach into, say, the 20-foot setback. So you can have stairs encroach it up to 5 feet into a setback, but then there's certain things like roof eaves and overhangs that can encroach into, or you're going too fast, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That can encroach into the setback angle. Go down. So the roof dormers is what can extend into the setback angle.
There it is, angle.
Yeah. So the table is pretty specific with what can encroach into the setback and what can encroach into the setback angle. So really, you can't have any portion of the actual building, any kind of enclosed space, encroach into that setback angle.
Did everybody catch that? To me, that's an important thing. You can't have an enclosed space that encroaches into that setback angle. But there can be architectural elements like the roof overhang or a cupola stands out that can encroach into that.
So, Chris, when we see a presentation, has this been checked already, or does that happen between concepts and final, or at what point does that get checked?
It is supposed to be checked when you see it. It will get checked again in the DPR process. So just to clarify, it's like a series of dominoes. The first domino that has to fall is you all, the DRB, okay, and that's an aesthetic review. And at that time, that the application is circulated to planners for review before it comes to you. That's staff review comments, okay, that you all receive. Then they have to submit for a DPR, which is a staff level to review to make sure that it's compliant with the LMO. So it'll get checked again, and if something got missed on the DRB, it'll get picked up then. And then the final, once they get DPR, the final one is a building permit that they can submit for, and it'll get checked again there to make sure that it's compliant. So you all are the first, and there's really three levels that it could possibly get picked up on. Now, nothing can happen until you all give an approval. They can't get a DPR until they get DRB approval, and they can't get a building permit until they have a DPR approval, if that makes sense. But what I want to express is that if I have a piece of property and I know through zoning, I know that I can build 2 units on that lot. I have that potential by right to do that. Well, this is the very same thing. I can build up to that setback line, which let's say it's 20 foot off of the property line. I know that by right, I can build to 20 foot of vertical construction to 20 foot from the property line, because that's in my my 3-dimensional building envelope. And hold on, I'm going to let Nicole make a comment.
Well, there's a couple other things that come into play with that. So they cannot exceed density. So just because they have a building envelope doesn't mean that they can maximize it. They've got density restrictions, there's maximum impervious and open space restrictions. But basically, as long as they're meeting all of the development standards, such as those things like the maximum impervious, your maximum height, your maximum density, as long as all of those different standards are being met, then they can build to it. So if a specific zoning district has a height limit of 60 feet, that's what the LMO allows, and that's what an applicant can build to, as long as they're meeting all of their development standards. And I think that kind of leads into what Chris was going to want to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And so, if you will, you have this 3-dimensional box that you can build in on a site, and your all's charge is to look at it aesthetically and how that you can work with that building in that box to make it more in keeping with the design guide or in keeping with island character. And you all have done that. You all are excellent at doing that. At the Mitchellville site, you suggested breaking up by using different materials and textures on the facade and bringing the color up a second story from the bottom story to help visually shorten the building. That's exactly what the design guide is doing. We just can't push them back. We can suggest, but we can't require that they build less than what's within that 3-dimensional box. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, having said all that, I understand your comments specifically with regards to Mitchellville, and we could go back to Folly Field, the development on Folly Field, and the development at Gardner. It makes sense about the massing and how it relates to the road. But per the LMO, they have a right to do that. So I would suggest to you that if you're still concerned about that as a group, that you can suggest changes to town council to the LMO. And you all, again, here's something that you all have done in the past, and specifically about the size of signs. And I'm happy to report that the changes to the sign size is in the next LMO set of changes that are coming to the planning commission, town council.
It's on our list, our next list.
It's on our next list. It takes us, it has to go through a process, so it takes some time, but you all said that signs are too big, and council agreed with you and heard you, and so they've modified that, and it's coming. So I say that because I don't want you all to be frustrated, and I want you all to understand what you can do and can't do. Does anybody have any anybody have any questions?
No, I mean, that's a good lesson. That on what our bound. I mean, this is a good exercise to learn what our boundaries are, and I think that's very helpful. Sorry, Judd, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I know I was working with the folks trying to do the self-storage, and I think I want to understand if Nicole and Chris can kind of talk to this, is that, and I think this kind of came across in the Mitchellville one, and what we've seen on South Forest Beach is that there is a maximum building square footage, gross floor area allowed. What is the maximum size like that building can actually be? Like, if you've got enough acreage, can you build a really huge building, like in the middle of it or on the edge of it, or does the building, like, is one single building max out in a particular size? Especially, I know sometimes it's tougher with the residential because you're allowed a certain amount of density versus commercial, it's pretty cut and dry as far as the gross floor area you're allowed. I don't know if Nicole, I know we had a discussion when it came to just that, the storage area, but when it comes to just overall how big an actual building can be individually.
Well, I mean, it's going to depend because each zoning district has its own set of standards. So there's different densities allowed for different uses. There's different impervious coverages that are allowed, and then there's different height requirements that are allowed in each zoning district. So I don't think there's a cut and dry answer that says once you reach 100,000 square feet, that's your maximum. It's really going to depend on the zoning district and the use. And then it also depends also on the type of use, because you can have a commercial, say shopping center, which is based on gross floor area, or you can have a hotel that's based on the number of units. And that came up down in the resort district, down in South Forest Beach, where, there were some complaints about the size of the buildings out there, but they were meeting their density. So, if they were allowed to have whatever it is, say 35 units per net acre, as long as they weren't exceeding that, the size of the building didn't matter, other than making sure that they met their setback and buffers and making sure that they met their parking requirements and didn't exceed their maximum impervious coverage. So there's really no cut and dry answer. There's different things that we look at based on the different types of uses and where it's located on the island.
Yeah, I know it puts a burden on staff. I mean, there's certain, calls when it comes to certain things. I think that, when we saw that site at Mitchellville and, they're pushing those side setbacks in such a way, and the building has such a perceived mass, especially considering it was a U shape, that that front side just made it look, and the front and sides really made it look like a much bigger building overall as far as its square footage. And I think that's kind of the balancing act when it comes to especially some of these waterfront and some of these resort district with the 75-foot height, and the Mitchellville with the 75-foot. These taller buildings are definitely are the trick of it.
And I think that's probably what led us to having this discussion with y'all, because some of the things we heard when that was being reviewed, just caused some concern. I think we heard, we're not going to approve it if the building is this high, or, the mass of this is just too large. We're not going to make a motion to approve it. And it's hard from a staff perspective, because if the LMO allows it, if they have enough acreage and they are in a zoning district that allows a building to be 75 feet in height, and it's meeting all of the development standards, we have to approve it. There's nothing that allows us to deny it. So we just wanted you all to be aware of the different parameters that we review and what we're looking for. And, an applicant has a right to build in accordance with their zoning district and those standards. And, the charge of the board is to make sure that whatever they're building, if it's in the corridor overlay, is in with island character and meeting the design guide and is aesthetically pleasing.
And so, I would just add to what Nicole just said, so here's where it comes in. We're going to require larger trees in that buffer. We're going to require, arbors or dormers or, whatever on the architecture. We're going to a color change from the second floor up, whatever that is. Those are things that you can do to help, and those are things we're looking for you to do to help break up that building and to mitigate its size. can still suggest that, it'd be pushed back further. But it is just that, a suggestion, and can't be required. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this sort of relates to that. So, we've been kind of enforcing this 4 or 5 foot landscape buffer up against buildings. So in that particular case, you have your buffer, you had a fire lane, and then we would be able to still make them do another 4 foot strip between the fire lane and the building, correct?
As long as that didn't push them back from their setback.
Well, it did in this case because they didn't build on the setback on the right side because there was a fire lane. That was on the left side. They were right up against the setback, from what I remember, because that was just planting over there. It was just trees and stuff. But they had a buffer, whatever it was, 10 feet, whatever. Then they had their fire lane, 14 feet, and then we had Steve move that building over to get another planting strip between the fire lane and the building. But if we go to the letter of the law, they could have moved that building all the way over to the setback, other than the fact that the fire department's going to make them have a fire lane.
Well,
So,
I think
You can require whatever landscaping you see fit. I mean, that's part of what you can require or suggest or recommend is adding landscaping to soften the look of the building. And
but he's saying,
we made them move another 5 feet.
yeah,
we made them
move the building another 5 foot to accommodate some additional landscape space, and
they did.
Yeah.
But
I feel I'm not trying to put words into Nicole's mouth, but we can't make them do that. You can't move the building back 5 foot from the building envelope just to accommodate landscape area. You can change the landscaping and increase it within the buffer off of the property line, but you can't push that building to accommodate more landscape space. Now, they might have to push that building to accommodate a fire access because you can't have the fire access in the buffer.
Right. I mean, we've been pretty good about that. That
Yes.
4 foot or 5
Yes.
foot, and that is something that should be in the LMO. That should be a built-in
I don't
thing.
disagree.
Forget the vertical setback, the angle setback. All that is, I think it's well thought out. I'm not going to go in and say, well, we need to make this 60 degrees instead of 70, whatever. My charge is to make the building look good within that 3-dimensional space. And I think we have a very talented group here that does that well. But if I was going to add one thing, it would be the Dale Strecker Memorial 4 foot strip that I think he was always insistent about it. And it was, for the newbies, Dale was my predecessor, and he would focus on that distance between a parking lot or a sidewalk and the building and say, no, you got to give me something soft up there. And over the 3 years we sat on the board together, he totally convinced me that that's something to fight for, and because it does make a big difference. So, and it gives David and Judd more things to comment on what goes in that little strip. So, but yeah. So Nicole, if ever we were going to add something, that would be it. And the setbacks are what the setbacks are. Island's a great place. We're not. But some of these things could become a New York City where you can stick your head out the window and yell at your neighbor who's 4 stories up, and run the little clothesline between your windows, just like in the old Godfather movie. Because some of those buildings are going to be that close. when it's all said and done, it's gonna, I think I made an analogy, if any of you watched Game of Thrones, that whole strip along Mitchellville could be a new wall. I mean, literally, just if everything's 15 feet apart and they're 5 stories tall, it's just gonna be a big giant wind tunnel. So, but okay, I'm done.
I got a question. As it relates to kind of what we're just talking about, like in that instance, you know, you have basically a reinforced turf grass fire lane that's right up against the building, and you can't have foundation plantings. And isn't the design guideline pretty clear that, for lack of a better word, you have to have foundation plantings or something, you know, vertical landscaping up against buildings? And if so, if there is that language, maybe I'm misremembering, but if there is that language, then what teeth does that even have, you know, in this particular instance? I mean, clearly turf right up against the side of a building, there's no foundation plantings.
Yeah, you can definitely require that. I think the line here is, you know, if an applicant's proposing, say, 75 feet for their building, and it's beachfront, like the Mitchellville property, and the board thought, well, 75 feet's too high, we won't approve it at 75 feet, we'll approve it at 60 feet, and that's it. That's where we're saying you can't really do that. You know, if the LMO allows a building to go 75 feet in height, and they're meeting everything else, then there's no reason for you to deny it. But if they have a 20-foot buffer and then a parking lot, and you want to require an additional 4 feet of landscaping from in between the parking lot and the building, you can definitely require that, even if it makes the building move 4 feet back. That's something you can require because you're making the site more aesthetically pleasing and kind of softening the look and the mass of the building.
Well, to Michael's point, do we, or does the town, LMO committee, any of these people, do they look at like worst case scenarios for developments? I mean, take Mitchellville, like Michael was just saying, I don't know if it's waterfront mixed use or whatever, you know, high density, high building, you know, worst case scenario, somebody's putting a max building height, wall to wall, on what they can, all the way across. Do we look at that and what that would look like? Because, I mean, in my opinion, that's potentially not island character if you've got a whole strip of that, but it could be allowable by right. So I'm just curious if it gets looked at holistically in like a worst case scenario, you know, look.
I think I'll answer that, David. I appreciate what you're saying, but I think we need to remember that the ordinance is enacted by town council, and is not necessarily a function of, you know, making sure it's aesthetically pleasing. We try to, or they try to, and staff provides them with input, but the final call is town council. And sometimes buffers are reduced for whatever reason. Sometimes setbacks are reduced for whatever reason.
There's the option for an applicant to request a reduction in setback and buffer, and it depends on the use, and it depends on certain planning. So the buffer standards are a little bit more flexible now with the newer LMO that we have in place, where they can have a reduced width if it's more heavily vegetated, things like that. But the zoning districts were, you know, all established with different development parameters, so different height limits, different impervious coverage limits, and, you know, thought was all put into those different types of zoning districts and the areas of where they are on the island. And I think the point Chris was trying to make with, you know, if you don't agree with it, you can request something in writing to town council or the planning commission, because when you guys were discussing the Mitchellville one, you were concerned with the height that was allowed along the beachfront, and you said you didn't want a building that high along the beachfront. So I think what Chris was suggesting is, if you don't think it's appropriate to have a building that's, say, 60 feet in height or 75 feet in height, then put that request into town council and give reasons why you don't think it's appropriate in that zoning district. And then that's something that they can look at and have staff research and see if amendments are required or what's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for?
I'm totally in agreement and on board with all that. Personally, I think it's unfair if a developer was to spend a bunch of money hiring consultants and come to us only for us to say, you can't do that when it is allowable by right. But at the same
Right.
time, I can see scenarios where I can't say that's out in character. If you've got like Michael described, a great wall of 75-foot buildings, with a mere 50 feet separating them, which could be the case. So my 2 cents.
I think for me, I guess that's sort of where now the question then comes in, if character limit, the requirements we can, I guess, make not as a suggestion, but as a requirement. And if everybody maxes out, we may end up with very flat facades, which to me are not island character. And I will say that to me, I hear what you're saying, that it has to go to town council, but the concern is really the big difference I see between Hilton Head and, let's say, a lot of other island resort or beachfront resort areas is that you don't have the beaches packed with these tall buildings, one after the next, after the next, after the next. That, to me, is part of that huge island character to protect. So I think I'm struggling a little bit with how much depth of facade can we then enforce, or does it become purely material color as far as how our
material color.
They're charged to make it.
Annette, so I would say if you as a group are concerned that the current LMO is going to allow development that is contrary to the design guide and is going to create something like you just described, then you as a group should say something to town council in a letter.
I agree. I think we should say something to town council. I think the last time when we talked about signage, we just simply told them we thought some of the signs were too big. And then they asked us to come back and tell them what sizes they should be. We managed to get that through to them. I don't know how we're going to get this other one through.
Yeah, this one's a little more complicated because there's a lot of different instances, conditions, heights, zones, blah, blah, blah. So it's, we just have to take our charge and try to unbundle the buildings to address Annette's concern about big flat walls. We have to be able to, okay, you have this wall at the 20-foot setback, but you can't have the entire wall at that 20-foot setback. You got to give us some ins and outs. And in my mind, that's within our, I don't want to say powers, but making them break up the wall or break up the masses and things like that. That would be something I would still be insisting on. I thought the Mitchellville building was very well done. I thought it was a good looking building. I think I probably said that 20 times during the whole review. It was just so big for the reason that I think Judd brought up, is it was a U shape. And so a lot of the air was between the buildings, but you didn't get that perception driving down Mitchellville Road because it just looked like a big wall. It was a well done wall. It was just big. It was, and Steve from Architecture 101, I thought he did a really good job addressing our first round of concerns. He worked on the corners a little bit. He changed the base, did some other things. And it's going to end up a good looking building. But since the lots at Mitchellville are relatively narrow, when the person next to them sells their lot and we get another one and another one and another one, it's going to be big. At least when you go down to Coligny, there's, 300, 200 yards between big buildings, the Holiday Inn's not sitting 50 feet from the neighbor. There's space, there's sunlight and air and all that good stuff. But I wouldn't know what to tell them. Change the angle to 50 from 60.
Well, you don't necessarily have to tell them what to do. You can put in a letter that you have concerns with the height of the buildings and the massing of buildings along the beachfront, and are asking them to look at ways to minimize that impact. And then that's where, if council directed staff to research that and look at some alternatives and what can be added to the LMO to address that, so it's not like you have to come up with a list of what you want changed. You just really need to let them know you're concerned if you have concerns.
Yeah. Well, why don't we make an agenda item for the next meeting, and it'll give everybody a chance to think about it. And if we want to draft a letter, we can draft it with some skeleton ideas, and I can write something up. But give everybody 2 weeks to think about it instead of trying to solve it right now. But I think it's a great discussion. I would estimate I probably agree with 95% of the staff comments every time. Some of the architectural things we may not agree. Site planning standpoint and all that, I think staff's always right on. And I always go through their comments. I read every one, and they have that little checkbox on the right that says meets island character, meets the scale of the neighborhood, blah, all those. And sometimes we'll get one that says no, 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 and then we approve it because it's the right size, But that's more of an irony thing than something that needs to be solved. Oh, my dog's barking at the trash man. I'll go mute. All right, was anybody got anything else, Nicole or Chris, for that topic?
No, that's all.
No,
Okay.
I think that's it from this end. And again, I appreciate the open and frank discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, for your time on that, because
You're welcome.
it's good to revisit, because the first year I sat on the board, I didn't really know what we could tell somebody. I would just comment on whether I thought their building looked pretty, but it's good to know what you got as your backup. So I think this is a good discussion. Yeah. Yeah. All right, then. Should we do the next item on board business, Chris?
Yes, sir. Hold on.
Okay. It's a meeting schedule.
Yes, sir. I'm with you.
Okay.
So we need to vote on the 2021 meeting schedule. You should have received this in your packet. There are days of note. December, there's only one meeting in December because of Christmas, one meeting in November because of Thanksgiving, and the May meeting is altered. Is it the May meeting? For, I'm sorry, is it May for, what am I trying to say? Heritage. April. I'm sorry, it's the April meeting is altered. There's only one in April because of Heritage. Now, just as a side note, staff is working on setting up what we're calling the Living Lab, which is in the old courtroom building. It's under renovation right now. That should allow us to meet properly socially distanced in person, but I don't have a date on when that will happen. But the schedule for 2021 is up for your review and comment and approval.
All right. So has everyone had a chance to look at it? You get Thanksgiving, you get Christmas, and you get the Heritage. Other than that, you belong to the town. Yeah. And we get paid the same regardless of how many
Oh,
meetings we
I
got.
thought that was figured.
All right, so I will read this officially. Board members, do you have any comments, questions, and concerns on the proposed schedule? If you do, raise your hand. All right. And may I have a motion to approve the 2021 meeting schedule?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 meeting schedule as submitted.
Thank you, David. We have a motion by Mr. McAllister. Do we have a second?
I second.
I'll second.
We got a second from Ms. Foss with a late second from Ms. Lippert, so we'll take the one from Ms. Foss. And Teresa, will you please call roll and everyone vote yes or no?
Miss Lippert,
Yes.
Miss Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Miss Remke, I'm not sure if she's still on the line. I don't believe so. Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes, it's unanimous with Ms. Remke not voting, and we have a quorum, so motion passed. And so now we move on to staff report.
Yes,
Minor
sir.
corridor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Minor corridor approvals since your last meeting. One at 6 Hague Point Circle, which is the Cross Island or the Crossings Park. It's for a restroom. The restroom is so far back, it's not visible from the corridor. And it is also a design that was in years past approved by the DRB. So it got minor corridor approval. There was a fence at 3 Pensacola Place. That is to hide bike storage. 105 Wild Horse Road was a co-location on a cell tower. 856 William Hilton Parkway, again, is a co-location on a cell tower. And 130 Shipyard Drive is a co-location on a cell tower. Easy for me to say. 55 Matthews Drive is a self-storage lighting upgrade, along with 5 Yacht Cove Drive, again, is a self-storage lighting upgrade. Are there any questions?
Nope, not for me.
That concludes staff's report.
All right, thank you. Next item is adjournment. So we are officially adjourned. See everybody next time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye.